you got to realize that whatever you're doing, you're competing with somebody. What is it that gives you an advantage over your competition? Whatever you're good at, try to be great at it. And if you're great at it, good things will happen.
Maverick. Welcome, ladies and gentlemen. You could have been anywhere in the world, but you're here with us. This is the Maverick Podcast. I'm your host, DJ Maverick. Today, we have another super talented guest in the building. We have CEO of Critical Fault and U.S. Congressional candidate, the one and only Madison Horn. Welcome to the podcast.
Thank you so much. What a hype, man.
Yeah.
Do all my introductions, please.
Absolutely, absolutely. Before we dive in, though, maybe for the 1% of the people out there that don't know who you are, tell us a little bit about yourself.
Okay. Favorite color is green.
Really?
Yes.
Okay.
I have two cats.
That. Okay.
In all seriousness, I am from Stillwell, Oklahoma, so northeast part of the state.
Mm-hmm.
My dad is a lifelong teacher. He was an ag teacher.
Okay.
I'm a farm kid.
Awesome.
But not always a farm kid.
Yeah. So not afraid to get your hands dirty.
No,
Yeah.
I actually love it.
Okay.
But like I said, I didn't always live in Stillwell, Oklahoma.
Mm-hmm.
I have had this amazing career that I'm very grateful for, that allowed me to travel all over the world, all over the United States, working in cybersecurity, working in critical infrastructure, in video production and media. Awesome. Yes, and it's been an absolute whirlwind in many ways.
Very cool. So let's rewind a little bit. Let's talk about growing up in Stillwell. What kind of stuff were you into? You know, if I would have asked you growing up, hey, what do you want to do when you get older? What would have been the answer?
Oh man. So if you would have asked me at the age of like 6, I would have said that I want to be a trick horse rider.
Wow. That's very specific.
It is. But
that's awesome.
I thought it was so cool. We'd go to
yeah.
the rodeo and we would see these cool kick-ass girls just doing tricks on horses.
Yeah.
And I had horses, I had a little pony. If you would have asked me at the age of like 10 or 12, I thought that, my purpose was to be a teacher.
Okay.
My dad, like I said, was a teacher. My grandmother was a teacher. Everyone worked within
really?
the community.
Yeah.
And so I said, okay, well, this is what I assume that I'm going to do.
Family business, right?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Public school, family business.
I like it. Yeah. Cool. That's cool. So confession, I don't know anything about trick horse riding or anything like that. But I'm assuming that's not the same thing as like the barrel stuff, right?
Two different things.
All right.
I just wanted to do tricks. Definitely didn't want to ride barrels. That seemed harder for some reason.
Okay.
But you like ride backwards on your horse, or like
ride
standing up.
Okay.
Or ride it upside down. I mean,
so like
crazy.
tricks.
Tricks,
like, wow.
yeah.
Okay.
Trick horse riding.
And you never actually like tried any of it just for fun or anything?
Yeah, on my Shetland pony that was maybe 4 feet tall.
That's amazing.
So then when I did fall off, much softer landing.
Yeah, cool. So what is it like growing up in a small town? Now you're like in OKC, probably a little bit more probably urban and,
Sure.
a lot more people, right?
A lot more people. But, confession here is that, I haven't always been in Oklahoma.
Okay.
So I lived in Atlanta, Georgia for 5 years. That's where I went to
even
college.
More drastic of a change.
Totally, more drastic of a change. And then I lived in DC for almost 8. But even when I was in DC, then I lived in New York for part of that stint for 8 months. Mm-hmm. I lived in London for 5 months.
Awesome.
All being relocated for work. Mm-hmm. So I've been out of Oklahoma. I've lived in larger cities, but those experiences really just solidified why I wanted to come home, to ensure that there is progress happening in the state and there's good leadership and good thought coming back to the state. Yeah,
you're probably all different places, and you're like, why don't we have this in Oklahoma, right?
Absolutely, absolutely.
Especially when it comes to like resources. Even like, fast internet, stuff like that, right? It's like amazing, right? Like why not?
Yeah.
Right?
And it's so funny you say the fast internet, because it is so true. So on my last campaign, I know you were cyber stalking me.
Oh, just a little bit.
It's fine. Then we lived in a Sprinter van for 40 days.
No way.
We went 5 days out, and we would come back to home base, Oklahoma City,
Cool.
and like change out the suitcase, shower. all
I've
those
seen
critical
YouTube
things.
videos where it's like living the van life and it looks kind of cool, but then they don't show all the other stuff like having a shower, where do you go, figuring
Right.
out all the logistics,
Yeah,
right?
Absolutely, absolutely. The community really brought us in, but I say that specifically because we had to carry a hotspot everywhere we were, so that we could interact with voters, so that we
Absolutely.
could do basic things like answer emails. And there were so many places across Oklahoma that just dead, no service whatsoever.
Wow.
And
Even with the hotspot.
yeah,
you couldn't
even
get-
with the hotspot.
Wow.
And it
Okay.
seems like a first world problem, but basically.
But it's 2023.
Exactly. No, it's 2023.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yes.
Like, come on.
It's time.
Yeah, absolutely. So let's talk about a little bit about high school.
Oh God. Okay.
What was high school like? Were you into sports, academics? Like, what were you into?
I paused because like a little bit of both.
Okay.
So I loved playing basketball. Loved playing basketball. It was, my upbringing was a little sporadic. I was abused as a kid. And so I was so active. It was just like, get me out of the house. So
Yeah.
I played basketball. I ran track. I played volleyball. I was in what we called DECA, which was like a business club. And I
Okay.
was on a ethical debate team.
Wow.
And so I constantly stayed busy. But I loved math. I loved physics. I loved science. But I was also a little bit of a rebellious kid. Even then, I had to have a job because I was a poor kid.
Yeah.
And so, like, I wanted to pay for my prom dress and I wanted to buy a car. And
Yeah.
so,
Same. I definitely identify like coming from, humble beginnings and
Yes.
having to like just, hustle to get stuff done, right?
absolutely, absolutely. So, always kind of all over the place. But I had this job at the Boys and Girls Club that I absolutely adored. I got to teach leadership and character development to kids.
Very cool.
And a girls class that, oh my God, trying.
Yeah.
Gave me some patience, but just fell in love with them. And so like I'd skip high school to like go to work.
No way.
Yeah,
Okay.
my high school counselor is out there somewhere being
Yeah.
like,
Yeah, I remember.
yeah, no,
Yeah.
exactly. So that was high school for me.
Mm-hmm.
Busy. I had a beautiful community though. My graduating class was 100 people.
Wow.
So we all knew each other.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. And then what? I'm assuming trick riding was out of the picture. Like, what was like career ambitions after that?
Yeah. I mean, I think like so many other people, you don't know what the heck you want to do when you grow up.
It's so hard, right? Like at
Yes.
18, you're supposed to figure everything out. Like, come on.
Oh,
It's hard.
no, thank you. I joke, but I said the statement earlier. I didn't really know what to do. My home life, there wasn't a lot of stability there, and so for me, it was okay. I have to be financially independent. I didn't know really what that meant because I never lived on my own. So I moved out when I was 18 years old, had my first apartment. I was going to a small community college. I knew that I wasn't reaching my full potential. I didn't know what that was, but I knew within my environment, I wasn't going to get there.
Yeah.
And so I was like, okay, I love what I'm doing at the Boys and Girls Club. Their headquarters is Atlanta, Georgia. And so like, how do I get there?
So you just moved?
I saved, so I got my first tax return ever
No
from filing
way.
taxes.
And you're just like, let's go.
I packed everything I had in a 25-foot U-Haul
Mm-hmm.
and drove that bad boy to Atlanta, Georgia.
Without a job offer. You're just like, I'm just going to go. Their headquarters there. I'm going to figure out when I get there.
I was like, I have enough money from my first tax return to do this.
Yeah.
And I knew that I could like figure it out once I got there. And I enrolled in school there. And so, yeah, that's,
Wow. So risk taker, ambitious, right?
I think then I don't know that I would have said that. Like it felt more of a survival. Like if I was going to get out of my environment and break a cycle,
That makes sense.
then I had to. Like
Yeah.
I bawled my eyes out driving out of my driveway. I called my dad after I was an hour away just because like I couldn't like tell him bye.
Yeah, I always hear that the biggest hack for anybody is to move out of wherever you grew up in, right? Because nobody's going to know you. Like there's not like all this like, sort of history. You can redefine yourself and you can be whatever you're going to be and sit like nobody knows you,
Right.
Would you agree that like that's a big hack to just move?
It is, but like I don't want to say it in a way that people think that you can run away from who you are as a person, right? Just because I removed myself out of that environment doesn't mean that I still didn't think the same way or that I lacked exposure to broader things. And so, you mentioned like, my God, wasn't that just like a total twist?
Right. Like what was plan B? Like you're going to move. What if the money runs out? Or what if, I have all these questions, like what if?
And I mean, I couldn't have allowed myself to do that. I wasn't raised.
Yeah.
Not that my father, if something truly happened, like my dad would have done anything and everything to help me.
Sure.
But there's no way in hell that I could have asked.
Yeah.
Because it was my responsibility to take care of myself. And that's how I saw. And so.
And that speaks volumes with, how you were raised and everything, right? Because you're having to fend for yourself and sort of make things happen and make something out of nothing, right? So congratulations on that.
Thank you.
Because that takes like a lot of guts to do that. You just move in, especially, small town, all of a sudden you're in Atlanta. That's crazy.
It was wild, but I had like 4 or 5 odd-end jobs and you just did it.
Wow. So what was the sort of career focus in school? Did you declare a major? Or you were still kind of just taking a lot of random classes, trying to figure it out? What was the, what happened there?
Yeah, that's just like an unexplored, like how do you figure out like what you want to go to school for? You just assume like, business or whatever. So I was studying business at the time because it felt generic enough and like focused enough. Because I had these like odd and end jobs, then to me, like I knew that I was supposed to graduate college.
Yeah.
Like that is what we're told you're supposed to do. That is what leads you to success.
Yep.
And so I was doing it as a checkbox exercise.
Got it. So you're like, I'm going to select something that's practical. Business is practical. I can do something with this, right?
But it ended up being an absolute plot twist. While I was in Atlanta, one of those odd and end jobs, I was checking people in at a front desk, a downtown hotel, and there was a group of cybersecurity consultants that I got to know.
No way. So that's where the cybersecurity started?
That's where it started.
No way. Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
And they offered me a job, and then it was called security. And I was like, I'm only 5'5". Are you sure?
Yeah. You're like, what is this exactly?
Yeah,
right?
exactly. Yeah. And they're like, no, cyber. And I was equally as confused.
Yeah.
But really fell in love with it. I switched my degree. I actually studied Homeland Security.
Okay.
I was at a military college and really just fell in love with foreign policy.
Wow.
And
so you went all in.
I did.
Yeah.
I went all in.
You just like fell in love with everything. Yeah.
I think it really hit to my love and my passion for service. I talk about my dad a lot because he was such a pillar in my life, but there's so many other giants that I've had.
Yeah.
But I love to serve and like do things for others. And, we were kids, when 9/11 happened. And, I can remember coming home in 6th grade and like sitting in front of the television by myself as a kid, watching people fall from the towers and just like sitting there crying but not understanding what it meant.
And you don't know like that you're never going to forget that, right? Like that memory is like ingrained forever, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I had, to your point, I had no idea what that meant. But it's just like I felt this like immediate need to like, what do I do?
Yeah.
Nothing. I'm in 6th grade, right? But that's always stuck with me. And I've had other moments in my life where I've had kind of that call to action. And so cybersecurity has filled so many of those personal passions.
Yeah, that's awesome. I'm sure you've seen this change throughout your career, but you tell me, to me, it seems like cybersecurity in the past has been like kind of reactive, right?
Yeah.
And now it's like more proactive, right? Especially if you believe in machine learning, AI, like you can start to identify stuff maybe potentially before it happens, right? In the past, it was maybe like they're paying a bounty if you found a vulnerability, like a patch or something. Has that been the case?
Look at you talking about bug bounties.
There we go.
I love this.
I told you, I prepped.
Yeah, you're crushing it.
Yeah, thank you.
So I love that you make this delineation between proactive and reactive.
Yeah, because it used to be like old school, and it seems like it moves kind of slow.
So the industry itself doesn't necessarily, but the buy-in,
Okay.
right? So when you talk about something that may never happen, then proactive services or reactive services, it's almost like an insurance plan, right? And so you're like, well, a widespread blackout has never happened because of a cybersecurity attack.
Right.
So why do I need to spend all of this money to protect the grid here in Oklahoma City? It's never happened before.
Yeah.
And that's such a dangerous way of thinking.
Yeah, like insurance, right? Like you don't know you need it until you need it.
Yeah, exactly.
Right?
Until you rear end someone.
Yeah,
or
it's almost
whatever.
perfect timing that you're here because the whole MGM, like that, and I think even Clorox was in the news recently,
Right.
and I read where MGM is potentially going to lose up to like above $8 million per day if they don't get everything sorted out, right? So I think it's super important. What are your thoughts of like maybe some preventative things that can happen? When I start to think about like all the, internet devices, everything we have is online. Like how crazy, like it could be like a vacuum. It's like connected to your Wi-Fi, right?
Yeah, I mean, everything is connected. I think that's what we have to realize. But when it comes to personal security, then, the way that I like to educate people is to just think about the things that, so if you think about your phone, what is it connected to?
Yeah.
Your smart fridge, what is it connected to?
Right.
And bad actors, then they look at you as an individual and see you as a means to an end. And so whether that be within your personal life or within your professional career,
Sure.
then like what is the worst thing that you could ever think about? And
Yeah.
I've taught so many classes around like ethical hacking, and I call it dark thinking.
Okay.
And so like think about the worst thing that could happen if you were hacked. So what would that be?
I mean, you lose access to your bank account, to your email account, your identity is stolen. Like, I mean, it's just like your life is taken over, right?
Sure.
And then you have to prove it's me versus whoever it is that's pretending to be you.
Entirely. Your entire life savings or everything that we've talked about leading up to now about stability is gone, right? But not just that. Like if you think about the individuals who have, the weakest link is people. And so when you think about a large organization, like let's say Devon Energy, and I only bring it up because it's a
it's
tall
right
building
next door.
downtown.
Yeah.
But, being the fact that people are the weakest link, then we have to teach individuals to think that way, to say, okay, if I'm a means to an end, then what do I have access as an employee to Devon Energy?
Right.
And
But even like from a IoT device, they have a lot of SCADA equipment that's out there in the field.
right.
People can hack into that, right? So I'm thinking even the manufacturers, they probably can do best practices to like be sort of more proactive as well, right?
Oh my gosh, of course. I mean, I love that you're bringing up SCADA. You're becoming a professional
Yeah,
here.
absolutely.
So for our listeners that doesn't know what SCADA is.
That's true. We should probably define
Yeah,
SCADA
we'll
because
define that.
they just probably think you like go and dig and oil comes out, but it's much more complex than
Oh my
that.
God, it's so much.
Yeah.
It's like pressure and flow and storage, and that's just the basics.
And streaming live data to the second.
Oh, absolutely. It's real-time monitoring.
Absolutely.
So for those listeners out there, SCADA is basically anything that communicates with the physical world. So the computer program or the piece of software says breaker open, breaker closed, or valve open, browser, valve closed. So that is basically SCADA.
And it's all over the field, right? So they're monitoring pressures, thresholds to make sure everything's operating within safety parameters, basically.
That's right. And all the way down to temperature or like human interaction and what that should look like. But, you talked about IoT devices, then you should see my like big face smile on. So those IoT devices are put on top of systems that were never meant to be connected
That's true.
to the internet.
Yeah.
And so we've created so many more vulnerabilities in this modernization process that we haven't even realized, which is the benefit of ethical hackers because we find the holes, we find the gaps, and so they can be fixed, so they can be remediated. But, you were talking about the importance of being able to secure those systems. You're talking about the vendors.
Yeah, because when I'm thinking about like a lot of the manufacturers, like the default passwords and everything, and everybody's like
summer 2022,
end users admin or something, right? Like out of the box, it should be a little bit better than that, I would think.
No, absolutely. And this is actually a really big push that's happening right now, and kind of a call to action that energy companies and anyone within the world of SCADA, which could be manufacturing, chemical, water, nuclear, number of things, then they've been kind of calling for higher level of standards for vendors for a very long time.
Yeah.
But when you only have, 4 or 5 vendors in the space, then you don't really have that much power, right?
Okay.
And so the current administration has been so very, I won't say forward thinking, but is pushing so much more applicable cyber policy and regulation that I think is really pushing the industry forward in requiring these IoT companies and vendors to take responsibility and part of that risk.
Okay.
And it's we'll get off this. I know I'm going down a tangent.
No, I like it. Like, this is why we're here. We're here to nerd out.
Fair.
Yeah.
But it's called a cyber device trust mark. And basically that any type of product, whether that be something in your refrigerator or your camera or your phone or the IoT devices that we're talking about, then the vendor has to be basically build that device so it's secure out of the box versus you as an end user buying 100 of them and having to secure them on day one.
Yeah, that's not scalable.
It's exactly, it's not scalable.
Yeah, so the cool thing about you that you're kind of mixing like your sort of tech knowledge with running for office too. So the thing that I noticed with all the TikTok hearings that happened not too long ago, we don't have very many people in office who are tech savvy, right? And I don't know what the best approach, if maybe there's like a committee, a trusted committee, or maybe you do start to recruit people that are more technical. But some of the questions that they were asking towards that, hearing for TikTok were not very tech savvy questions.
You mean it was driving you nuts?
It was. Yeah, it was crazy.
And I think it drives anyone nuts in our generation and below. Not want to discount anyone above, but it is incredibly frustrating to see the fact that we interact with technology every single day.
Yeah.
It drives our economy. It drives, our relationships abroad, and it plays such a large role in like what is our workforce going to look like.
Kids' schools, right?
Exactly.
They don't carry backpacks. They carry an iPad to school. No more books.
Yes, it blows my mind sometimes.
Lucky.
I love that I screwed up the live from Instagram because I couldn't figure it out.
It's all about practice, right?
It is.
And to your point, maybe that's what needs to happen. Maybe they need to practice or training or whatever that might be to be more tech savvy.
And that's where if we're talking about elected officials, then I don't know if it's just the training aspect, but let's talk about like the demographic of our elected officials.
Yeah.
Why don't we have, age limits? Why don't we have term limits?
Definitely.
I respect anyone who's willing to run for office, anyone who is there to truly serve. But at some point, then it's time for fresh leadership that understands the problems of today.
Yeah, I would say if me looking in from a younger perspective, what's the motivation, right? It's super difficult. It's probably not fun. It's going to be a hard job, right? So what was the motivation to run for office?
Sure. So, it's a couple of things. And let's go back to the beginning of our conversation, right? I'm from Stillwell, Oklahoma.
Yeah, shout out.
Hey. Yo, what up, Stillwell?
Yeah, repping.
Stillwell has the lowest life expectancy in the United States.
No way.
And that is because of the lack of economic development, the access to good, clean water at times, the access to healthy foods, the amount of violence that happens in the area, both domestic violence, the drug use, and this is the environment that I grew up in. And, I don't want to say that I'm a statistic of rural America and make myself some martyr, but I did experience abuse. I grew up with that in my childhood, and it's something.
Sorry to hear that, by the way.
I appreciate that, but that's part of my story, and I think that it's important for me to share, so then people understand that I'm not running because I have the right last name or because I have this buku bag of money behind me. It is because of the fact that I understand the struggles of my state. I understand the struggles of rural America, and we cannot be leaving people behind. And my purpose is I hope that this isn't a cliche, and it probably will be, but like my purpose is to ensure that the people that come after me in my life then do not have those same struggles. And I don't see us moving forward. And so, a huge motivator for me to run is to get back to just basic tabletop type of conversations and problems that everyday people are facing. And then the other piece, we've talked about it and nerded out a little bit, is the fact that, it does keep me up at night that our critical infrastructure systems are not properly secure.
I bet. And you actually know, like me not knowing, it worries me. You knowing the details, I bet that's worrisome for sure.
Absolutely. Yeah. And seeing the amount of global instability that's happening is only increasing those attacks. And I don't see action from current elected officials. Mm-hmm. And in fact, so let's talk, 6 years ago when we are starting to see the rhetoric from Congress, from Washington, starting to heat up. And, we saw an increase from, initially we were tracking outside nation states, terrorist organizations, attacking the U.S.
Right.
And then I started seeing an increase in attacks here in the U.S. Mm-hmm. And what that means is that we're literally destroying ourselves from the inside.
Yeah.
And, that tells me that we have problems that elected officials either don't know how to solve or they don't care to. Mm-hmm. They do not understand the privileged role that they're in and the place of leadership they're in. And frankly, it pisses me off.
Yeah, let's talk about the slogan. This is a great segue to your slogan. So your campaign slogan, tell me about that.
What is it?
It's time for people to give a damn, right? Yeah, basically? Or did I mess it up?
No, we're trying to just figure what that slogan is. But I'm very hands-on in my campaign. I want people to know that who they're interacting with, who they're voting for. And so, every piece of messaging, then my hands are in it. And my team around me, they're like, okay, what is this going to look like? And I'm like, what are you passionate about? I'm like, I just want people to give a damn.
Right.
And
right. Straight to the point.
Straight to the point.
Yeah, I like it.
Yeah. And they're like, okay, well, that shows your personality.
And I don't even know if that's your official campaign slogan. I just remember seeing it out there and I thought, okay, yeah, she means business. This is legit. Right?
I'm trying to test it out to make sure it doesn't offend too many people.
Sure. Yeah.
Last year, our slogan was bringing logic back to politics.
Okay.
A little bit softer.
Yeah. But same direction.
Same direction, still me, but round two, I have found my voice in this space.
Cool.
And so that slogan is much more connected to who I am.
Yeah, awesome. I like it. So tell me, maybe just, we kind of brushed over critical fault, but tell me what the focus is, what type of services you provide there.
Yeah, absolutely. So just so everyone knows, Critical Fault, then it is a cybersecurity-based company here in Oklahoma City. I got to know them over the campaign last year because I'm the only elected official, or I'm not an elected official. Maybe that's foreshadowing.
Absolutely. Let's put it out there, put it into fruition,
just
right?
Put it out there. So I am actually the only candidate that's ever ran with a cybersecurity background.
No way.
And so, of course, there's so much interest in my background because of it. And this group of individuals, the founders, reached out to me at the end of the last election and asked if I would be their CEO.
Wow, that's amazing. Congrats.
Thank you. I mean, incredibly humbling. I am, I don't know if there's a certain age that you're supposed to become a CEO, but I was like, crap, am I ready to do this? But it's been a phenomenal journey. That's not the question. But
I mean, Zuck did it in college. So
right. So why can't I?
You're good.
Thank you. But Critical Fault, what we focus on is all things ethical hacking. Mm-hmm. So we hack anything from banks to oil and gas facilities to substations to your banking apps on your phone.
Yeah. Let me hide them real quick.
Yeah, you probably should. You should probably turn your Bluetooth off.
Right. But that's good. So you're more on the proactive approach.
That's right. And then the other piece is that more digital forensics. And a huge part of my career has been on the incident response space. So when a company gets breached, then like we come in and do that incident handling.
Okay.
And so that's the other part of our business.
Very cool. So I think another aspect that's also important is I think that Oklahoma overall, like our economy, probably needs to be more diverse. It's super heavy oil and gas.
Absolutely.
I would love to have more tech opportunities here, right?
No, as would I. And I think that there's amazing things happening here in the startup ecosystem. There's so many, what is it called downtown? I'm not trying to give them a shout out, but there's so many incubators that
The Innovation District?
Yeah, the Innovation District, but there's
Yeah.
the Launchpad
Yep.
that is really trying to nurture entrepreneurs because, you know, going out and starting your own company is terrifying.
Yeah.
And so for the state to be heavily investing in this area, I think it's
great.
phenomenal. It is.
Yeah.
But for it to be successful, we have to ensure that Oklahoma is a place that people want to live.
Yeah.
Right. And so that's been a huge part of the problem in helping bring companies here. I sit on a board for economic development here in the state of Oklahoma, partnering with Israel because they are a huge tech hub, #1 place in the world for all things cybersecurity.
Cool.
And I'd love to bring some of the companies here, but we don't have the workforce. And so it's, you know, for me, it's really focusing on, you know, how do we build that here in Oklahoma? How do we attract good talent and make this a place that people stay?
Yeah, absolutely. Because if we're heavy, you know, into oil and gas, when commodity prices are good, things are good, right? But when those commodity prices, you know, crash, then you see people around the state having a difficult time.
Absolutely,
Right.
but it's not just that. I mean, not everybody in Oklahoma wants to work in
That
oil
too,
and gas.
that too,
You know, I give anyone who works within that field, because it's hard work, it really is, and who is still continuously and being dedicated to the space, because, you know, this is a whole other policy conversation, but like I do believe in the importance of energy independence, again, especially right now with all the tension around the world. But yeah, we absolutely have to diversify the economy here for a number of reasons.
Yeah. What about women in tech? I think that needs to happen, right? Like more and more often, right? How do we get these young girls interested in tech and make that a thing too, right?
I mean, absolutely. You're catching me from a women's conference, so I'm like full of
yeah,
good.
that's awesome. Tell me a little bit about that. Where were you?
Yeah, so sorry, folks in CD5. I was up in Tulsa, but I was a good mix of, you know, good old folks here in the district as well as in Tulsa as a statewide conference. And it was really focused entirely on how women entrepreneurs can support one another. What does that process look like? How to get capital?
Cool.
Just kind of talking about the mental exercises that you have to go through to really kind of stay true to like your brand and your mission and what does that look like. So it covered all types of conversations.
So cool. I think just, you know, seeing somebody like yourself is super inspiring, right? Like somebody's out there watching, they see you, CEO of a cybersecurity company. That's amazing, right?
It's very kind. It's I'm just following my path. You know, I don't know what that means, but I love what I do. I very much enjoy getting up and going to work every day, and I feel like that's a privilege. And so when you say things like that, it's kind of like, but I'm very grateful. I'm very grateful, and I hope I can always hold space for that.
Awesome. I'm been told that you have a cool story around nuclear power. Is that correct?
Oh, wow. You
Tell
really
me a
are
little bit
stalking me.
about that.
So I think one of the most interesting times, like in my career, when I really realized the impact of the work that I was doing, it was really early on, and it was one of those, oh my God moments. So I was on like, I think my 4th work trip, and they told us that we were going to go up and test this training center.
Okay.
And it was for an energy company. And I was like, okay, cool. A training center. This sounds actually not cool.
Yeah.
We're just going to like test some printers.
But it doesn't sound like a big deal.
No, not at all. And then I show up, and this training center is about, you know, 1 city block from a nuclear power facility. And it was actually the training facility for the individuals who work within the nuclear power facility. And so I'm standing next to this almighty piece of machinery that I'm being told that we are supposed to protect. And I'm like,
They didn't feel the need to tell you all this before.
Oh,
It was just
no.
like just a training facility. Yeah.
No, exactly. And I've seen Chernobyl. I'm sure you've seen the series as well. And to understand what the possibility and the devastation that could happen, then it was a little bit of an eerie feeling. And after we tested the power facility, then we actually got to do a tour inside. And I just remember walking underneath the power lines.
Oh, wow.
And I'm not kidding you. And this wasn't because I got the heebie-jeebies, but it was because of the fact the amount of energy that is being transferred from that facility, then like your hair stands up. The ground, the gravel that you're walking on is literally vibrating like a hum.
Jeez.
It was such a humbling experience.
I bet, yeah.
Such a humbling experience.
Yeah.
But it put into reality like the work that we were doing.
Sure. And what was the test? Like just to find vulnerabilities, or like what were you?
Entirely. So, I mean, that's the entire role of us as cybersecurity practitioners is understanding how bad guys can do devastating things and ensuring they don't happen.
Yeah. All right. Let's go a little bit away from that.
Okay. You're getting scared.
A little bit. So one of the things I always ask my guests, if we were to pull up your playlist, who am I going to find in your playlist?
Oh my God, that's so embarrassing.
And it's okay. It's a safe space.
Yeah.
Nobody's watching.
Let's hope not. They've already tuned out. So, I rode around in a truck feeding cattle with my dad.
Sure.
So like 90s country music when I'm just feeling homey.
Yeah.
Or just like need a good easy drive. I'm pretty sure that's what we listened to, my chief of staff and I on our way here.
Okay.
Just good old 90s country.
So just like George Strait, Garth Brooks.
Yes, Brooks and Dunn, Shania Twain.
Awesome.
Yes, love it.
And you don't cry with those songs?
Wow, what a call out. Absolutely, I do.
Yeah? Okay,
sometimes
same.
I do.
Okay.
But then, I did live in Atlanta. So there is some, good rap music. I say it's good.
Yeah.
I love, good female vocals.
Okay.
It's, if I'm having a bad day, always can put on some, good, strong female vocals. And anything across the gamut.
Cool.
Anything from, Lizzo to Cardi B to Aretha Franklin. I mean,
that's awesome.
I was a nerdy choir kid, so love strong vocals.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's cool. So what would be your intro song? Wrestlers have the song that they play. What's going to be your intro song?
Oh man, I know this answer.
Yeah.
I just know that it's probably not entirely appropriate, but it's just this one line. I'll let folks go find it.
Nice.
But there is a line that says they set pictures, or they take pictures, they set goals, but I'm who they're trying to be.
Okay, cool.
And I know it's so cocky, but I think one thing that women do not do is we don't hype ourselves up and really talk about our accomplishments or all the positive energy. And so it's like my hype song.
Yeah, no, I like it. Yeah. I do the same thing. If I'm going to go into a big meeting or something like that, it's always hip hop music.
Yeah.
That's what I go to. So I agree. Yeah, that's cool. All right, so tell me.
I don't think I've ever said that out loud to people, so it's going to be funny.
Secret's out.
Secret's out.
Cool. So tell me, what are your goals for the rest of the year? You're super busy. You came from Tulsa today, so thank you for that. But
of course.
Tell me about your goals for the rest of the year.
Oh my goodness. I'm not someone who legitimately does set goals. My big picture goal is to ensure that we win this election and that the team and that we put in the time, the amount, the work, the good energy to ensure that happens. And so for me, between now and November, right, is just to ensure that my team feels confident in the work that we're doing and the messaging, and that we're really understanding our target audience and where people are, and ensuring that we're getting feedback. So that's really my goals, I guess.
That's awesome. I think, recently there's always been this political talk about parties, right? But I'm not sure if that really matters. I think it's more about the candidate, right? Tell me your thoughts here, because Oklahoma, typically Republican, right? So tell me a little bit about your thoughts around that.
Yeah, I think this is where I really kind of ruffle people's feathers, and I don't do it intentionally, but I am a direct person. I don't believe that one single individual always relates to one party.
Right.
And I mean, I hear it all the time. I mean, you probably feel the same way. You're like, oh, like there's some of the Republican Party, Independent, Libertarian, and then Democrat that you relate to or that you agree to.
And what I always hear from younger people is like, my vote's not going to matter, right? Like people are going to vote just, straight party on the ballot, right? That's what I always hear. I'm like, if everybody thinks the same thing that you do, it's going to matter.
I'm going to put a pin in that for a second because I do need to bring that up.
All right.
But when it comes to myself and political parties, then, obviously I'm running as a Democrat, but I'm also running on national security and ensuring that we have a healthy immigration system and ensuring that we are thinking about national defense and our foreign policy when it comes to cybersecurity. And so it confuses people.
And economy and growth opportunities.
Yes. But I don't understand why those have to be, Democrat or Republican views when it's just where we are and the conversations we need to be having and the problems we need to be solving. But the reason why I said we need to put a pin in the conversation of my vote doesn't matter, there's nothing that makes me more freaking frustrated because, it is a privilege to live in a democratic country and for us to be able to elect the people that represent us.
Right.
And we have a very lazy democracy.
Yeah, exercise your vote, right?
Exercise your vote. And the moment that any individual says their vote doesn't matter, then like you don't believe in change or like you don't care to be a part of it. And so anyone who says that to me, it hits a nerve.
Yeah, I always hear that, especially in the Hispanic community. It's always
Sure.
like, our vote's not going to matter. This is a Republican state. Like a lot of people just vote straight ballot, right? Which I don't know if you have any thoughts around that, whether that should still be a thing or not, or if people should actually like be mindful of who they're voting for.
I do. I mean, so I'll finish your statement in two pieces.
Okay.
So one, my vote doesn't matter. We've had people lose races by 100 votes,
Right.
50 votes.
That's a group of friends. That's a group chat,
Wow,
right?
you got a big old group chat.
I do.
That thing's on mute, I'm sure. Unless you were just constantly on that thing.
Yeah.
Anyways, that's a weird tangent. So, when it comes to, my point of view around straight party voting, listen, if you want to vote all Republican, then that's your prerogative. If you want to vote all Democrat, that's your prerogative. But I do think that it's lazy. I think that you need to be looking at the candidates. I think that, this is where I don't want to get political, but, the whole thing is freaking political. I mean, I think that's how we get candidates like Ryan Walters who are devastating for our state, devastating for our public education. So we have to look at the candidates, what they're running on, what they stand for.
Be informed, right?
Yes,
Yeah.
be informed.
Yeah.
And I think that's how we get a good balance of representation.
So how do you go about doing that? How do you drive that change?
Yeah.
Right? It's like climbing a mountain.
I think that there's such a misperception about, what the voter base looks like here in Oklahoma because we are so used to being a red state, but there's so much change that's happening here.
Yeah.
If you look at the races from 2022, and I'm a data person, so we're about to get nerdy for a second.
Let's do it. We're going to pod today.
Yeah, we're podding.
Yeah.
So if you look at the map from last year, then we moved every single county more blue.
Wow.
Every single county. And we did that because of the fact that we traveled to all 77 counties twice. So when you ask, what are you going to do?
You're going to be out there.
It's just the basic things of showing up, right? People want to have civil conversations. They want to meet the person. They want to build trust with that person. And so that's my responsibility, is to show up in the Latino community, to show up in our Asian district, to show up in the rural areas. And so that's what we're going to do.
Yeah, that's another thing that people think Oklahoma, and they probably don't think diversity, but we have diversity across the board. Even our food, everything's been growing. It's been cool to see.
Yeah, no, it's been phenomenal. So many... What's your favorite ramen place in Oklahoma City?
Let me see. The place on Hudson and 8th, right across the coffee shop. Is it? I forget how.
No. It's my favorite one too. And now
It's like a white building.
Yep,
and you have to get there super early to be in line.
Tamashi.
Yes.
It was like our comfort food last year.
Anytime it's cold, it's either that or pho. That's my go-to.
So good.
Yeah.
So good.
Yeah.
But Oklahoma it's very diverse, and this district is so diverse. And what people don't realize is, our gubernatorial candidate last year, Joy Hoffmeister, she won the district by 25,000 votes.
No way.
Gina won the district by like 15,000 votes.
Okay.
Like this district turned blue.
So it matters. Your vote matters.
It
right?
absolutely matters. Absolutely matters.
Cool. So I have in my notes here 1889, and I want to say there's like a Taylor Swift album similar, but that's probably not Taylor Swift, right? What's 1889?
Yeah. I'm probably gonna lose votes because I say I'm not a Swiftie.
Oh no, you
respect,
gotta say. You gotta
respect.
Say, you don't like her stuff?
No, it's not. Okay. Wow, you're really trying to get me canceled. No, it's not that I don't like her stuff. I think that she's killer. But
there's a rumor of a Drake and a Taylor Swift collab in the next album, by the way.
I am really bad at pop culture.
Oh, really?
Yes.
Okay. All right. We'll skip that then.
Thank you.
All right.
So 1889. So this is the what do people not know about me?
Yeah.
So I don't think that it's too hard to, guess if you're like, okay, who is this woman's who's the superhero, right? There's not that many women superheroes, at least not when I was growing up.
Sure.
And it's like Wonder Woman was it. I thought that she was stellar. I thought she was so cool. And why 1889? Then for me, it was like on my bucket list. I wanted to be an extra. I wanted to be an extra in a movie. I thought it would just be so cool.
Awesome.
And I always went to the theater with my grandmother. We just loved movies. And so when I was living in DC, then I had taken 3 weeks off in between jobs, and I just signed up to be an extra.
No way.
A friend of mine did.
Cool.
And all we knew was this code word, 1889.
1889.
Yes.
Okay.
And so we were just like, okay, whatever it is, if we get picked, it'll be cool.
Yeah.
And I have naturally really, really curly hair.
Okay.
You're like, how does this come into the story? Well, we show
I'm following.
we show up to get screened to see if we, met the cut.
Sure.
And they realized that I had naturally curly hair. The time frame of the extra that I was going to be in was the 1960s, 1950s.
Okay.
And so they made my hair just huge.
Awesome.
And they gave me the role because of my
The
hair.
hair?
Now,
Okay,
you
cool.
probably don't see me in the movie, but it was so cool once we found out. We were trying to pick people's brains or get the tea.
Yeah.
We're like, what's this movie? And they're like, we think it's Wonder Woman. And I had the most silent fangirl moment internally. I was trying to be be
Yeah. Fingers crossed you're telling me that that's what it was.
It was.
No
it was
way.
Wonder Woman too.
The stars just magically aligned.
Yes.
How does that happen?
I don't know. I don't win
Yeah.
prizes,
Yeah,
or the raffles.
Yeah.
And so it was just such a cool moment.
That's cool.
And it was an action scene, so I get to see the filming of a major production, how many people goes into it. It was a very cool experience.
Yeah. So if we go out there, we'll see you.
You know what? I've never been able to find me.
No?
So I
Okay.
think that I was probably cut. Maybe my hair wasn't
man.
big enough. I don't know.
That's funny. So you're mentioning movies. I'm going to put you on the spot. Maybe
Okay.
top 3.
My grandmother, her and I loved cinema. So I like Breakfast at Tiffany's
Okay.
a lot.
Cool.
Favorite most recent movie? I really enjoyed Oppenheimer.
I haven't watched it, but I hear everybody say it's amazing.
I won't tell you anything about it.
Okay, perfect.
But
Don't ruin it.
go see it in theaters. I think
Okay.
you have to.
Cool.
Third, man, I should have known you were going to ask a question about movies.
Yeah.
I don't know what my third one would be.
No?
Yeah.
Okay.
Sorry, I'm failing here.
It's all good. It's all good. So what about founders? You're in the tech space. Who are some of your favorite founders or maybe people you admire? You
Sure.
have some of those.
I do, but they're not, these big major figures.
Not like Elon or
Absolutely
Steve
not.
Jobs or anything like that.
I love that you said Elon Musk. He drives me nuts.
Yeah.
So I have been very, very lucky to have incredible mentors in my life. I worked in the startup ecosystem. I worked for the company that we got acquired by Accenture, so I did the whole Big Four thing. But the reason why I bring it up is because the founder that I worked with in my first startup, then he's been someone that I've been able to call on today.
Cool.
He's worked in the different parts of 3-letter agencies within the government, and really kind of been able to shape policy from the private sector. And so I just have such an aspiration. I have such an appreciation for the work that he's done, And, you know, if I ever have a question or like, you know, wonder if, you know, this problem set or like, don't know what I'm doing, then I always give him a call.
That's cool. That's cool to have a mentor like that. It's amazing.
I'm very lucky. Very lucky.
And I'm assuming we can't shout him out because of the 3 letters he's worked for in
No,
the
like
past.
he doesn't work for them. He's just been like consulted to them. No, like, listen, so there's 2 people that come to mind. His name is Matt DeVoe. I hate to bring other people into politics.
Sure.
I make this decision to run. But
we're just giving him a shout out.
No, Matt DeVoe. Yeah. I adore you.
Awesome. Cool. Yeah. All right. So we are getting the signal here that we're running out of time. But before we sign off, maybe tell us where can people follow you if they want to, you know, follow everything you're doing, maybe get involved with your campaign, you know, everything like that, plug in your social. What's the best place to find you?
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you. So our website's madisonhorn.com, super easy.
Yeah.
As far as social media goes, it's the same thing. My handles are Madison Horn.
Across the board?
Across the board.
Really? You're so lucky you were able to do that.
You know, not a very common name, I guess.
Awesome. Cool. I like it. I want to thank you so much. I know your schedule's probably super busy. Your calendar's on fire. So definitely appreciate you stopping by.
Thanks for reaching out. I think this is a really fun time. So I appreciate having me.
This is your house. Anytime you want to come back, just, you know, hit me up.
I'm going to need this purple mic. It's pretty cool.
It, right? It's all about the details.
It is. Yeah. Great job.
Cool. All right. There you have it. Ladies and gentlemen, the super talented Madison Horn on the Maverick podcast. Keep grinding because in dreams we trust.